At their convention, they had union leaders and CEOs. They had Democratic Party icons and lifelong Republicans.
Jon Stewart just torched the DNC, and it was nothing short of hilarious. On The Daily Show, he didn't just expose the party's blatant double standards. He took Kamala Harris down with him.
Democrats had people who prosecuted sexual predators and...
When someone like Stewart turns on his own party this hard, you know the cracks are showing. And trust me, we've got all the juicy details. So if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button, because you won't want to miss clips like this.
They had a guy yelling, "Screw the billionaires," followed immediately by a very happy billionaire.
Talk about contradictions. The Democratic Party has them in spades. That's why I often call them performative. They bend over backward to pander to every group imaginable, and in the process, they lose any real sense of identity for a party that claims to champion progressive values. Some of its actions are downright retrogressive, and Jon Stewart, he calls it out perfectly in his hilarious takedown. This is exactly why he deserves serious props. In a time when most media and late-night hosts like Jimmy Kimmel are too scared to touch these topics, Stewart shows real guts. It takes courage to challenge your own side, especially when groupthink rules the room. But Stewart isn't afraid to ask the uncomfortable questions, and that's what makes his voice so refreshing right now.
We need an economy that works for all of us, not just the billionaire class. My fellow Americans, when 60% of our people live paycheck to paycheck, the top 1% have never, ever had it so good.
Now, this is rich. Coming from none other than Bernie Sanders, a man who's reportedly worth millions and enjoys all the perks of the elite while railing against them. At conventions like this, it's all fiery rhetoric, empty emotion, and zero real substance. The Democrats love to rant about billionaires ruining democracy, but somehow they always forget to mention their own. Take Michael Bloomberg, for example, a literal billionaire who funnels boatloads of cash into the party whenever it suits them. Funny how his name never comes up in their anti-billionaire crusades. It's selective outrage at its finest. They'll vilify wealth when it's convenient, but roll out the red carpet when that wealth props up their own power structure. If that's not hypocrisy, I don't know what is. Bernie plays the outsider card, but he's been in the club a long time. And conventions like this, they're just theater for the masses. Now, this is interesting, considering the point Stewart is about to make.
Democrats had people who prosecuted sexual predators and...
This is absolutely hilarious. You've got President Bill Clinton sharing the stage with Kamala Harris, a former prosecutor known for locking up sex offenders, while his own legacy is forever tainted by allegations of sexual misconduct. The irony practically writes itself. One's a former president with a scandal-stained past, and the other is eyeing the presidency while claiming to champion justice. The contradiction couldn't be more blatant, but Jon Stewart didn't stop there. He also highlighted another glaring double standard within the DNC. Party members have loudly championed the so-called liberation of Palestine, waving slogans and tweeting hashtags. Yet the very same convention, not a single Palestinian voice was included on stage or in any meaningful representation. How does that square with their supposed commitment to diversity and inclusion? It doesn't, and Stewart isn't afraid to call it out. The DNC loves the posture, but when it comes time to actually walk the talk, they fall embarrassingly short. But the next clip annoys Stewart even more.
Let's choose Jon!
Yes. Yes, yes.
Moments after the DNC proudly declared itself the party of joy, American Palestinians began voicing their frustration over feeling sidelined and marginalized. It was a jarring contradiction for a party that claims to stand with Palestinians. Their complete absence from the main stage was hard to ignore. No speakers, no representation, no acknowledgement, just silence. Chief among those speaking out was Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who didn't hold back. She told reporters, "It's hard not to feel invisible as a Palestinian American. Our trauma and pain feel unseen and ignored by both parties. One party uses our identity as a slur, and the other refuses to hear from us. Where's the shared humanity? Ignoring us won't stop the genocide. The optics were undeniable. The DNC can shout about inclusivity all it wants. But when a group it claims to support is entirely excluded from its national platform, the message rings hollow. It's performative at best and deeply hypocritical at worst. Now here's Kamala Harris blaming Trump for the Russia-Ukraine war, when she and Biden have been in power for 2 years.
Encouraged Putin to invade our allies, said Russia could, quote, do whatever the hell they want. 5 days before Russia attacked Ukraine, I met with President Zelensky to warn him about Russia's plan to invade. I helped mobilize a global response over 50 countries to defend against Putin's aggression. And as president, I will stand strong with Ukraine and our NATO allies.
Kamala Harris isn't just the queen of word salads. She's the undisputed monarch of empty promises. Around the time she was making these sweeping statements about diplomacy and global stability, she was already serving as vice president. And what happened on her watch? Needless lives were lost, chaos unfolded, and American foreign policy looked more confused than ever. Her attempt to pin the blame for the war in Ukraine on Donald Trump was not only dishonest, it was illogical. Trump held no influence over U.S. foreign policy at the time. He wasn't in office, didn't control the State Department, and had zero authority to act. All he could do was voice his opinions, for better or worse. The real decision-making power rested with Biden and Kamala, and yet they deflect, distract, and dodge accountability at every turn. Pointing fingers is easy. Taking responsibility? That's another story entirely. And Kamala's track record speaks volumes. Unfortunately, the hypocrisy and double standards have seeped into the media as well. Left-leaning outlets often accuse others of bias while ignoring their own, just as former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki is doing here.
MSNBC, do they come to you every day and go, here's what we think is important to preserve and fight for whatever?
No, everybody gets a zillion press releases and pitch calls, but no.
No. I'm talking about the head of it.
Oh, no. You determine, we determine, each of us for our shows, here's what I'm going to cover today, and here's what I'm going to talk about, and here's what I think is important, which there's an independence-ish of that. And there also is, you're not waiting to be told what to say about anything. You're going to say what you think. So people can trust that, and that is a good thing.
See, I disagree with that. I think it's not that you're able to be independent. It's that you're then a prisoner purely to the minute by minutes. Purely
You mean
to
in terms of ratings?
the ratings, incentives, and all those other things. If you don't have the ideological component, right, then you don't have a governing authority of editorial authority, right? The greatest trick Roger Ailes ever played was he delegitimized editorial authority while exercising absolute steel trapdoor editorial authority.
The greatest thing he did, because it led them to be an arm piece, a mouthpiece of the right wing.
It led them to be exactly what he wanted it to be, which is an effective expression of his worldview.
And MSNBC, I am unburdened by not having, I can share whatever I think. I have obviously worked in Democratic politics for 20 years. I don't hide anything about that. It is a progressive leaning network. But nobody is, to the frustration at times of many elected Democrats, it is not a mouthpiece of the Democratic Party.
Now, if you've been keeping up with our videos over the past few weeks, you already know that Jen Psaki is flat out lying. We've laid out point by point how MSNBC functions as little more than a mouthpiece for the Democratic Party. And it's not just us saying it. Even Bill Maher, no conservative himself, has called out MSNBC for its blatant hypocrisy and shameless bias. But am I surprised by Psaki's latest assertions? Not one bit. She lives in a tightly sealed echo chamber where everyone nods in agreement, and dissenting views are treated like a foreign language. It's clear she's out of touch with what's actually happening beyond her media bubble. The reality? Americans see through this act. They're tired of being spoon-fed narratives that serve political agendas rather than truth.
4 hours of Joe Scarborough shouldn't be allowed in this country. and then, like, Rachel Maddow, like it's schizophrenic at times. Like, yeah, I do think there should be some semblance of an idea that, look, they're kicking progressive ass right now. And if progressives don't organize their media, their think tanks and all that, it's going to continue to happen. It's chaos.
I don't know about you, but I can at least understand if MSNBC wants to help the Democrats push a particular ideology. It's no secret that media outlets often have their leanings. And if they were upfront about it, fine. At least we'd all know where they stand. But what truly baffles me is the narrative the left keeps trying to sell, that MSNBC is a fair, objective, and neutral news source. That's not just misleading, it's a flat-out lie. It's smoke and mirrors designed to give partisan talking points the illusion of journalistic integrity. The reality? MSNBC is deeply entrenched in the Democratic establishment. Their coverage rarely challenges left-leaning narratives, and dissenting voices are either silenced or spun into caricatures. They're not reporting the news. They're shaping it to fit a political agenda. And yet, they still cling to this laughable pretense of neutrality. It's intellectual dishonesty at its finest, and anyone paying attention can see right through it. Media bias exists on all sides, sure, but pretending it doesn't exist at all is the real problem.
I will say, broadly speaking, what I'm not going to say Democrats, I'm going to say people on the left do not do that the right does very well, is support within the system each other. I'm serious. Like, and what I mean by this is this, right?
Yeah.
Theo Vaughn appears on Joe Rogan's show, right? He promotes what Joe Rogan's doing, but they all promote all of the things each other are doing and what the elected officials, I guess, are doing too. And the left is a little bit more kind of discombobulated in terms of supporting the different entities on the left. There is not a left ecosystem that matches the right ecosystem.
But Ailes didn't do that either. It was the principle, the ideological principles, not the party. He and Murdoch the same way. They're promoting an ideological worldview, right? That they believe is correct. And Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan, I think, are different animals than any of this. Like, I don't think they're part of any machine.
You can see it all over Jon Stewart's face. The moment Jen Psaki mentions Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan as examples of right-wing media. He looks genuinely baffled. And honestly, who can blame him? That reaction says it all. This right here is the core problem with the modern left. The belief that anyone who dares to criticize their views or even offers a platform to someone with a different opinion is immediately labeled as right-wing or in bed with conservatives. It's a lazy and dishonest way to shut down dialogue. By that logic, anyone who values open conversation or nuanced discussion must be a political enemy. It's tribalism dressed up as virtue. Theo Vaughn is a comedian. Joe Rogan is a podcaster who talks to everyone, from scientists to conspiracy theorists to presidential candidates. But because they don't toe the progressive line 100% of the time, they're suddenly framed as right-wing operatives. It's absurd. This mindset isn't just intellectually weak. It's toxic to the very idea of open discourse. When disagreement becomes heresy, the echo chamber becomes a prison in the end. Jon Stewart's takedown of the DNC and Jen Psaki expose a deeper issue: performative politics, media hypocrisy, and a growing intolerance for dissent. When comedians and commentators are labeled right-wing for simply questioning the narrative, you know something's broken. The left's refusal to acknowledge its own contradictions is catching up to them, and voices like Stewart's are making it impossible to ignore. The illusion is finally cracking. This brings us to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed